This is Josh Beiser from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this critical thought, your daily discussion on game design. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can pitch future critical thought topics. Alright, before we get going today's critical thought, I want to let you guys know that I'm going to have another Let's Play vote when we hit 1,500 subscribers, which at this rate is going to be very soon. If you're missing it, we're currently doing the Let's Play of Abstraction before moving on to the works of Zachtronics. So be sure to let your friends know to subscribe, and for all you newcomers, thank you so much for enjoying the content here. I notice that I'm still seeing some of that desyncing issue between my voice and the audio, so I try to raise the bitrate up on the audio encoding to see if that will do anything. If it's not, please let me know, and if you have any suggestions for how to fix this or to mitigate it, please let me know in the comments below. For today's critical thought, we're going to be turning to kind of a bread and butter topic, because I've been kind of nursing a migraine over this weekend, and that's not good when you have videos and other stuff to do. But this is a topic that I can talk about in my sleep. And for those of you who are professional game developers, this is one that you can pretty much take the day off from. You should know this by heart. But if you're an enthusiast or a student wanting to know more about the game design process, this is going to be very important. And our topic is going to be about abstraction. Now, a few years ago, I wrote an article about action versus abstraction when it comes to game development. And what that essentially means is how the game is essentially played. When we talk about action, we're referring to player input, player involvement. So, fast hands, being able to be micro-intensive, the kinds of skills that let you get through a game like Ninja Gaiden, Quake, Doom, anything like that. Abstraction refers to how elements and rules are explained on the engine or on the game design point of view. And that's not really that good of a definition, I know. It's easier to explain it than it is to define it, I think. So when we talk about abstraction, we're talking about the underlying rules that define the game space and how the player will interact with them. So, like I said, on the great scale of action versus abstraction, abstraction is the RPG side of things. So, when I strike an enemy with my sword in anything from Final Fantasy to Bloodborne to Skyrim, you name it, when I hit that enemy, a number of calculations are done behind the scenes that will determine how much damage I did, how much damage was resisted, and what the enemy's health is at now. And all those rules are on the back end. They're in the game engine itself, and that's what abstraction is at its basic level. Those rules and underlying mechanics that you as the player aren't directly impacting. It doesn't matter how rapidly I press attack if we're playing a turn-based strategy or a turn-based RPG like Final Fantasy. Likewise, my reaction time doesn't mean anything if we're dealing with the character's, dexterity or agility that will determine whether or not they avoid an attack. When we talk about abstraction, the basic philosophy, the basic history of it, stems from the pen and paper and tabletop genre. The classic example that's used is the extrapolation of health in RPG. When we talk about health, it's not this quantifiable substance that determines how well you're avoiding or absorbing damage. The classic example used is when you take health damage in RPG. This can be extrapolated or abstracted as the difference between taking a minor cut along your arm versus someone just cleaving your chest in half. And when you run out of health, that can be considered like the killing blow, you're bleeding out, stuff like that. And when we talk about abstraction and game design, it's important to understand that every video game ever made, no matter what the genre or the developer was, has abstraction. Like I said, on the low end of the scale, we're talking about the damage type or the number of damage points Slash does in an action game. On the high end of the scale, we're talking about complete rules and systems in games like Final Fantasy or the underlying mechanics of a grand strategy game like Europa Universalis, Stellaris, etc. But again, as a developer, you have to understand that no matter what your game is, you will have to think in terms of abstraction. Because obviously, we're not dealing with reality. There's no real world example or relation to Mario eating a mushroom and growing 2 times its size, no matter how much we would love that to be. But when it comes to abstraction, part of the challenge of being a game developer is understanding just how much it should impact playing your game. Going back to my article, like I said, it is a scale between action and abstraction. And as we move to the extremes, which if I can get my hands right, you're going to find more hardened fans of that. Someone who loves Doom for its high-speed, fast-paced combat is not going to enjoy Final Fantasy or any number of JRPGs that's about turn-based combat. Likewise, someone who plays something like Skyrim or Final Fantasy or anything that is heavily abstracted may find a game like Dark Souls or Borderlands too fast for them. And that is perfectly acceptable. But as a developer, you have to understand your audience, and you have to be able to think about your game in terms of these underlying rules. And as we add more and more abstraction, that becomes harder and harder. As we've seen with a number of RPG-based titles, if the development isn't as rock solid as it can be, it's very easy to leave elements that can break the game. And anyone who's watched speedruns of RPGs like Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, Final Fantasy, and so on, can certainly see that at the high level play. But of course, it's important to point out that we're talking about competitive or, master level play, and chances are most of your audience is not going to get to that level. But you have to still present the rules at a point that they can be easily explained and broken down by the design. One of the examples of when game design kind of fails is when you design a system that the AI just simply can't use. And we've seen this in a number of strategy games. Infamously enough is the idea of the AI just not understanding or providing a solid opponent for games like Civilization. Recent Civ games like 4, 5, and 6 have had trouble with the AI properly using all the rules as disposal. But if we start talking about that in depth, who knows how long we'll be here for today. But the idea is, good game design, the AI should be able to understand and extrapolate the abstraction at work. If you don't do that, then you have to give the AI special considerations. And going back to Civilization, this can be bonus resources, faster research times, more armies, stuff like that. And unfortunately, that kind of stuff can be seen as game breaking or unfair for the player if there aren't the means to compensate. And as a special point for you folks watching, for those of you who've played strategy games like Civilization, Europa, etc., what do you think about that when the AI is simply given advantages instead of playing better? And are you fine with that? Because I've heard things from both sides of the table in terms of what they enjoy there. Some people want the AI to be challenging. They want the AI to test them in their mastery. Other players are fine with the AI being given, special advantages and prefer, not to have this grueling, challenging experience with the AI. But again, it can go either way. And like I said, this is going to be a quicker critical thought because abstraction is a basic concept, and it's one that's a part of every game. As a game designer, when you're thinking of the rules and how you want your game to work, it comes down to it comes down to you building these rules and mechanics. It's more, and as we talked about in earlier critical thought, this is the difference between high level and low level thinking. High level is kind of like the thought process behind these rules. Saying something like, when the enemy sees you, he will attack you. The low-level thinking is the numbers and the hard computer logic that goes into it. So the low-level thing would be, if the player is within 5 feet of the enemy, trigger the enemy's attack state, enemy will move towards player and use so-and-so attacks. And again, you need to understand both in order to build a solid game. But when it comes to abstraction, there's one final point I want to talk about. And that is when you're trying to abstract real-world elements into your game. This, my friends, could be its own critical thought easily. And there are very strong philosophies or very strong arguments for both. This goes back to a commonly used phrase of video game logic. And we've seen examples of this with, your character can take a rocket to the chest. As long as he picks up a health kit, he'll be fine. Or we drink potions that will magically, restore cuts and bruises and contusions and all that kind of stuff. And when it comes to video games, understanding how much or how you want abstraction or your abstract elements to work is a major part of this. And there's a classic example that I turn to in this regard. For Sid Meier's Pirates, and I know I mentioned this on earlier Critical Thought, Sid Meier talked about how much he wanted real world to impact the abstracted elements of playing his game. And one of the classic examples was scurvy, and how he removed this very real world and very major threat that happened during the Age of Sail for his game, because he didn't felt that it added anything to the already abstract elements of his game. And that's kind of the other major point of abstraction, is that it removes or replaces real-world considerations and constraints with the rules of the game. Again, a game like, for instance, Borderlands. There's no real-world idea that, bullets are so interchangeable for different kinds of pistols, different kinds of rifles, stuff like that. But in the world of Borderlands, that's fine. Likewise, in RPG, one sword isn't, magically better than another sword because there's a +1 or a +2. But this is a fantasy world. We can have magical versions of swords. We can have swords that do fire damage and ice damage or spawn copies of ourselves, because that's how the abstraction works within them. And again, for a basic talk, we can end things here for abstraction, but there are a lot of layers to talk about. Again, with just how much should real world impact a game? Should you look at realism when designing your game, regardless of the genre? These are valid topics and can lead to some very heated discussions. And if there are any other aspects of abstraction you would like me to talk about in a later critical thought, be sure to let me know in the comments below. But we'll end things here for today. I have to go back to nursing this migraine, but there's still more work to be done for today. So thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying things, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment. And like I said, if you have any suggestions for future topics, let me know, because we are always looking for more. But otherwise, be sure to stay tuned tomorrow for my next dissecting design piece. That will be for Monday if you're watching this recorded. And I'm talking about one of my favorite strategy games of all time. So be sure to tune in for that. And tune in daily for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBicer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBicer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.